Officially get started to the meeting. Welcome everyone to the second in our speaker series. Again, thank you so much to Nancy Brors for putting this all together. It's December the 20th, 22. Okay, so here's our agenda. I'm doing the welcome right now. We're going to do the club collect, the land acknowledgement, the idea statement. Then we'll have Katherine speak and a question period. Karen Gujra will update us on BPW Canada and International. Heather Ellis, past president, will update us on BPW Ontario. And then anyone who wants to share any information or what's going on will have a chance at the end. So, this meeting is the Sustainable Development Goal: achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Land acknowledgement.
Were you wanting to record this, Anne?
It is being recorded.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Karen, Jocelyn, would you read the land acknowledgement for us?
Certainly. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, BPW Ontario members acknowledge that we gather on traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe, Chippewa, Anishinaabeg, Anishinaabeg, Attawandaron, Wendat, Huron-Wendat, Mississaugas of the New Credit, Atikameksheng, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We are grateful for the opportunity to work with Indigenous peoples who continue to live in these lands to create a safer and more abundant future for all women and girls.
Thank you so much. Idea statement. I believe that was Barb Ford that's going to read that for us.
I don't think she made it back, Anne.
Oh, did she? Okay. I will go ahead then. BPW Ontario welcomes all people who identify as women, regardless of, oh my gosh, I'm covering it. Seriously. Sorry. I've got, okay. Regardless of race, religion, age, nationality, citizenship, geographic location, ability, marital status, socioeconomic status, education, sexual orientation, or gender identity, and is committed to providing an inclusive, welcoming, and empowering environment for all members. And Karen is going to read our club collect for us.
May we see beyond pettiness, fault finding, and all forms of prejudice. Let us meet each other face to face with honesty, patience, and generosity of spirit. May we go forward unafraid, confidently putting into action plans that are carefully considered and adequately debated. May we depart with the knowledge that through BPW and our collective energies, we can impact upon the greater good more than can be realized alone. And may we have the strength to abide by our convictions, the reward of sharing our burdens, and the joy of success in all we do.
Thank you, ladies. Katherine Reid, who is a member of Niagara Falls BPW. Katherine has worked in the grape and wine industry for 37 years and was included in the 1999 edition of the Who's Who of Canadian Women as Female Winemaker. Katherine has been active with the Lions Club member for almost 20 years, receiving the 100% President's Secretary and Zone Chair Awards, along with the International President's Award and Lion of the Year. She was awarded 2015 Volunteer of the Year, working with youth from the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and was a member of 2 town committees, including the Agriculture and Safety Committees. Other awards, the Melvin Jones Fellows Award, Helen Keller Fellow Award, Lion of the Year several times, President Award for working with youth, and Niagara-on-the-Lake Volunteer of the Year for Youth in 2015. Katherine Reid is a winemaker for Joseph's Estates Wines in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and we are thrilled to have her here talking about her wines. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, I hope you can all hear me okay. I will be first starting to speak about my work with wine. A brief timeline. In 1981, I graduated from McMaster University and I studied geography and statistics. I got my diploma on Saturday, and on the Monday, June 1st, 1981, I started working for Chateau de Charmes on the research project. At that time, there were only 3 cottage wineries in the Niagara area. Enniskillen, which started in 1994, Chateau de Charmes and Newark Wines, which is now known as Hildebrand or Trias. So back when I first started, there were not very many small wineries. In 1988, we were able to complete the project on the colonial selection for winter hardiness. That was a report done by Chateau de Charmes. And the work was presented at the Vineland Research Station in Vineland. We had hard copies given out and they were reprinted. You say 1988, when that was being printed, I was the one doing the typing and doing the graphs with stats. And believe me, that's when word processors really became helpful. Because if you had to change something on page 67, you would have to retype everything else. So learn quite quickly the importance of a word processor. And stats, again, stats is not a very common thing that females go into. One of my goals in life was actually to be the statistician for the Buffalo Sabres, being I was a real diehard Sabre fan. And there was not very many females in the statistics program, needless to say. And again, going back to university studying stats, that's when you had the computers, which were the size of a room, and you had the stack of cards. Each line on the computer program was 1 card. So you would have a stack of cards this high just to get the computer to come up with one little statement. Learning stats the hard way, you really learn it. But then again, in 1988 was also a very important year in the wine industry. It was the creation of the VQA, which is also known as the Vintners Quality Alliance. That was a big change for the Ontario wine industry. The varieties of grapes that were planted were the vinifera varieties, which were being grown internationally, and particularly in Europe, and the hybrid varieties were being pulled out by the acres. So again, being a research project that we had worked on at Chateau de Charmes became very helpful, because the critical temperature for grapes is about -25°C, which we can't hit normally about 3 years out of 10. So 3 years out of 10, you could have your whole vineyard die off if you did not have the right clones. I know one of the ultimate compliments I think that was ever received was in the office one day, and we got a call from Dennis Robinson. She's one of the well-known wine writers. This is going back 20-something years ago. She had heard about the research project, but being that I could remember all the stats off the top of my head, they just gave the phone over to me to talk to this lady. And I gave her the information. I says, I'm curious, I said, how did you hear about this research project? This says, we did not send you anything. And she had said that our competitor from Hildebrand at the time was so impressed with our work that they were bragging about the work that we had done and told her. So I thought, when your competitor compliments you to somebody international, that to me is the ultimate compliment. Just like with my next point in 1991, again, to me, a very important date in the wine industry, Enniskillen Winery won the Grand Prix d'Honneur at Vid Expo. That is probably the world's most impressive wine competition in the world. So to win the Grand Prix d'Honneur, only 5 wines in the whole world will get that honor every year. So when Enniskillen got that for their ice wine, it put Canada on the map internationally. And then you started to see a lot of people wanting to learn more about Canada and particularly their ice wine, which in my opinion, Canada does ice wine better than most. In 1992, Sunnybrook Farm Estate Winery was started. which is Ontario's first fruit-only winery. A few wineries like Stony Ridge and Councilman did make some wine from fruit, but they were still predominantly grape wines. I was their first winemaker. We were able to win an award at the Pacific Rim International Competition, a best of class, for their iced peach wine. There were many other fruit wineries in the country. I remember when I received the award, I actually called Debbie Pratt from Inniskillen and I told her the information. She says, what does this exactly mean? She says, no, that means you won best of class. Which, I mean, when we were the only fruit winery, that didn't sound that impressive, but when there were 37 wineries in New Zealand alone that made fruit wines, that made it sound much more impressive. But then in terms of egos, particularly being a female, it just sort of put me out of a job, because then the owners wanted to be the winemakers and I became sort of obsolete. So then I was just let go. In 1996, I started at Dosas Estate Wines, and I've been there since day one. The retail store opened up in September, and they had 2 wines, but we did make a strawberry wine in the summertime, and we had it available by Christmas. It actually won the first gold medal at the All Canadian Wine Championship for the winery. I know one thing that was really cool with that is in the mid-90s, I started to also let new country wine, and one song, Strawberry Wine, was actually one of my favorites. And I actually got to meet the singer who sang that song and give her a bottle of strawberry wine, and she autographed it. And then I got her to autograph some labels for me, and I put it back on the wine. So I actually still have those bottles. It's kind of cool. That was her first gold medal. That was our first gold medal at Dosas. Also in 1996, the wine program at Brock University started. It's also known as Covey. So their first graduating class wouldn't have come up till about the year 2000. On April 13th, 1997, a front page story was done on the women in wine in the people section of the Toronto Star. In the photo and the story, the following women winemakers were included at the time: Sandra Marinissen from Marinissen Estates, myself from Joseph Estates, Sue Ann Staff, she was at Military at the time, she just started there, I think 2 weeks before the photo was taken. Lisa LeBlanc from LeBlanc Estate Wines, which is in southwestern Ontario. Lisa Gibson, she was the winemaker for Kittling Ridge. Anne Sperling from Cilantro Winery, Susan Swayze from Vincor Winery, and Mira Ananich, she was also at Vincor. She had been with Shadow Gable with the takeovers and the amalgamations. It was Vincor at the time. To me, Mira is considered to be the first woman to be in the predominating role of winemaking in Canada. She came to Canada in 1969 from Poland. She is a mentor and she's one of my role models. She's still actually very active and volunteering, although she's not in the wine industry anymore. Actually, this is the photo that was on the front page of the people section. I do have a copy of the photo, but I couldn't find it. Actually, there's even quite the story behind that photo at that point in time in my life. I was actually dating a photographer and he did freelancing for the Star. So we'd actually had a disagreement. So he thought he would try to make up and get the photo into the paper. So I still have a copy of that paper, but from that article, most of us were included into the who's who of Canadian women in the millennial edition. So there was a big celebration at the ROM in Toronto. So the people in the who's who of Canadian women were some very exciting women. They did get to meet many of the very high profile ones, like Kim Campbell was there. Shania Twain wasn't able to make it. Roberta Bondar was also there, but so were several other thousand people. But it was actually quite an interesting evening. In the year 2000, the Niagara College wine program started, and that is now expanded to include some beer and some distillation programs. Actually, I'm really impressed with the Niagara College programs. They're giving the students really hands-on courses, and I've even taken a couple courses to upgrade my skills several years back. In 2001, Joseph's Estate Wines received the American Airlines Award at the Indy International Wine Competition for the best dessert wine for their 1998 Fidel Ice wine. It was 1/1000th of a point from the best wine in the competition. There were 4,000 wines in that competition from 17 different countries. So to be 1/1000th of a point off, that's kind of like Olympic numbers. And then even now in 2022, we entered 2 wines into the All Canadian Wine Championship, and we actually won 2 best of class. One for the 2019 Gewürztraminer, which is a skin ferment white wine, and one for the 2020 Rosado, which is the Pinot Grigio. Now in 1974, just to go back a little bit, when Inniskillen opened under Carl Kaiser and Don Zerotto, there was only 3 small wineries that had opened up in the Niagara area at that point in time. It included Chateau des Charmes in 78, which is, I started there in 81, and Newark Wine started in 79, which again was under Joseph Corley. Most of the wines at that time were done by the larger producers, such as Bright's, Andre, Chateau Gay, London Wines, and Peter Allen. The most popular wines or best-selling wines at that point in time were Baby Doc and Spumante Bambino, for those who remember those wines. As a university student, those were quite popular wines. Now in 2022, there are 185 different wineries in Ontario. There are 17,000 acres of grapes planted, and there are more women taking the program every year, and many of them staying in the marketing and retail aspect. There are still very few of the women that are going to be vineyard managers. So that was the main timeline for the wine aspect of what I've done, but just to give you a bit of a rough down of what else I've done. CSOV was an organization for the Canadian Society of Enology and Viticulture. That was active when I'd first started in the industry, but it basically collapsed when Brock opened up, and then the organization got confused and eventually just closed down. Now in 1987, the Lions Club started to accept women as members. Up until then, it was a men's only organization. And I joined Lions Club International in 2000. By 2001, I was on the board of directors. By 2003, I was club secretary. By 2007, I was club president. In 2009, I was the zone chair, which meant I had 7 clubs that were reporting to me. By 2009, I was selected to go to the Senior Lions Institute in Chicago, where they chose 100 Lions across North America to get this advanced training. Then in 2010, I was region chair, which meant I had a bigger territory alliance, which involved 15 clubs. Then I was selected for the program to basically train the trainers, which was done in Salt Lake City. And they only chose 20 people from 20 lions from across North America. So I was one of the ones chosen. That was an interesting event to see the difference between the Canadians and Americans, because the weekend that we were being trained was the weekend of the Olympics, especially being in Salt Lake City, which had been an Olympic host. During our graduation from the program on a Saturday night was also the time when the Canadian USA hockey game was on. So I asked if we could get updates during the program. They thought it was a little bit strange, especially being a female one in hockey updates. I go, I'm a Canadian, so that was important. But we ended up losing the game, so it wasn't that bad. In 2013, I was selected for the International President's Award for my work with young lions. I've worked with the Leos, which are the lions, well, the 12 to 18-year-olds. And I was even chosen as their provincial leader and held several successful conferences. 2014-18, I was on the Town of Niagara-on-the-Lake Safety Committee and Agriculture Committee. Then this is in 15, I received the Volunteer of the Year working with youth. In 2018, I ran for being town councillor. There were 24 candidates, but I wasn't elected. And then I tried again in 2022, running for town council, where there were 13 candidates, but again, I wasn't elected. But it was kind of hard to campaign during harvest season, because that's when I'm working 7 days a week. So maybe I'll have to wait until I retire to run again, which could be coming soon. So that is the main presentation. Are there any questions? Hopefully there are some questions.
Yeah.
Oh, Norma?
Oh, Catherine, so good
Yes.
to hear from you. You mentioned London wineries and
Yes.
London wines, and I remember them from London, Ontario, when we moved there. There's no grape fields in around London. How would somebody like London Wines have made their wine in those days?
They would have got their grapes mostly from Niagara. Some of the vineyards there, they actually, some of the growers here still do ship out to Peely Island. They ship out to London. And they were able to do some blending as well. So for some of the wines that are cellared in Canada, you only need 30% Canadian content to be able to call it a cellared in Canada wine. So 70% of it could be imported wine from Argentina, Chile, other places. So the rule at the moment is still 30% Canadian, 70% import to be cellared in Canada. They are trying to change that rule. For anything that's VQA, it is 100% Ontario. Any of the wineries that were opened up after 1992 do not have the ability to import any wine, so it has to be 100% Ontario. But any of the pre-92 licenses do have the ability, since they are grandfathered in. Like they would bring in tankers at 20,000 liters at a time, and then just blend it off with some Canadian content to be able to call it sold in Canada. But London did have some good wineries as well. I know the winemaker from the one that means Andres went to London, Jim Patience. He was actually a good winemaker, so he was able to keep the tradition going. But that is how some of the big guys could make a lot of wines, and you didn't need the consistency like you do now with the growing the better variety of grapes, which last year was a rough year. Some varieties like Merlot, where we normally would have 5.5 tons on our farm, we only got half a ton. So a 10 to 20% crop was quite common for Merlot last year, because it was more winter sensitive than others. Our Pinot Grigio was hit, I think we had 20% of a crop. Across the board, they're saying it's about 50 to 60% of a crop on average for the 2022 season. So
that explains the prices too.
Well, I think the price of the grapes didn't change. The prices were negotiated by the marketing board far before the season came in. And it was a very unusual season where the vines had just started collapsing during the growing season. I'd never seen that before. Like they would be growing like normal, then all of a sudden just collapse and die off. So right now, the main cost of the increase is the cost of these supplies. Canada, although we do have a monopoly rule, we used to have two glass producers, Dom Glass and Consumers Glass, and they both made wine bottles. So they both were competitive back in the 90s. They eventually amalgamated and formed one company. And when they formed one company, they got greedy. When they got greedy, it became more economical to bring in glass from Mexico, from Europe, and from Asia, to the point where they basically put themselves out of business. And then with COVID, it made the cost of shipping and getting supplies extremely difficult, especially in terms of shipping. In 2019, to bring in $50,000 worth of bottles, the shipping cost was $1,500. By 2021, it was up to $20,000. And that's just for the cost of shipping, not the cost of the bottles.
Oh my gosh.
So if you're thinking the shipping cost, think of mailing a letter being $1 and all of a sudden it's 10. How many of those, it doesn't take long for those costs to go up dramatically. There was an international, we don't have the screw cap place either. Those all come in from Europe. And the biggest surprise for me from a supply chain is a glue shortage. So what the glue shortage means, it was a label shortage. So to try to get labels where it normally would be a week or 2 week turnaround, all of a sudden it's taken a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. To the point where I actually left work early this afternoon because our labels finally came in. So we've been telling people that we can't send them wine for Christmas because we've had no labels. We've had the wine bottle sitting there, but no labels to put on those bottles because there's been no glue. That part, I don't quite understand why there's a glue shortage, but apparently COVID had something to do with the glue shortage.
Karen, you had a question?
Yeah, lots really, but so there's training that can be had to be a winemaker.
Yes.
How long does it take? And you had said that there's, and what kind of diversity is there for women and men? Equal, I guess women and men winemakers, probably more men than women, but and what would be a barrier to women getting involved in that business?
Well, when I started in the industry, the only training that was being done was like at University of California, Davis. There was training in France, training in Australia, but there were not very many wine universities that were focusing on wine training. But with the work that I was doing, to work in the lab, the tests were fairly basic. And to do a test on a small batch of wine or a big batch of wine, the tests were still the same, testing the alcohol test. So from the lab point of view, there are probably quite as many females as there are males. It's not as common being as out in the vineyard. You see a few women out in the vineyard, but not nearly as many men. And to be honest, I could not name one female vineyard manager. Like trying to look through notes in other places. But then again, that is sometimes long, hard hours. I know Dave at Chao de Charmes was working on the project because I could be the one that remembered where everything was and what they're supposed to touch and not to touch and when to pick up and how make sure things were marked properly. The only time they would let me drive the tractor was when it was pouring rain on clay near a ditch.
Wow.
I go, this is too stressful. I says, I'll go pick up the boxes. I mean, even though they're 50-pound boxes, you're left. That's less stressful for me than trying to drive on clay and you don't want to end up in the ditch. Especially if you're not used to driving standard and doing the clutch and this.
Yeah.
So I can see why not too many women would want to be doing that. I know while at Chao de Charmes, we were a variety like Pinot Noir, which is a very sensitive variety. And it's very thin skinned. So if there's going to be a big rain coming up, those grapes could pick up water very quickly. They swell, the skin split, the fruit flies come in, and you can lose your crop within 24, 48 hours. Or I remember it must have been 85, and my boss, Paul Bass Sr., had said, Kathy, call the unemployment office, see how many people we could get to help pick grapes. So I called, and they said, we can't send you people to do that job. I go, what do you mean? They go, that's inhumane. It's wet. It's cold. I go, I know. I'm doing that job. But we can't send you people to do work that's inhumane. I go, do you want me to go tell my boss he's going to lose his crop? Well, that's not our problem. Oh, I said, but I also do this job. I have a university education. That's not our problem. We're not sending you anybody. Okay. I had to go tell Paul that we weren't getting any workers. And the next year we got Mexicans in. Got 6 of them to start. Now, the Mexicans that do come in, there are very strict rules as to the guys who are allowed to come in. They have 2 main rules is that they have to be married and they have to have a child. Because this way they know if they're married and have a child, they're going to go back to Mexico. They're not going to try to find a Canadian woman to marry or whatever. So the money will be going back to Mexico, and both the husband and the wife have to report on how they budget their money so that they know the money is being spent properly. The guys aren't going out drinking or doing something they shouldn't be. And that usually they do invest on their home property. They'll sometimes buy a farm. Being in Mexico at that point in time, the average wage was $2 a day. So they could come in even at minimum wage and make $40 a day. That's like working 20 days every day that they worked. So they would put in 10-hour days and 6 days a week, 7 days a week during harvest.
So is that still the case? Bringing in people from Mexico or out of the country to work, because the Canadians won't do it. It's inhumane.
Correct. I remember even being young when I was in high school, I did pick cherries, I picked grapes. Like my uncle lived in St. Catharines on 3rd Street Louth, and he lived near a farm. So my grandmother and I would stay at his place a couple of weeks and ever just pick fruit and make money. That was back in the early 70s. You don't see kids doing that now. Very few teenagers would be up there picking fruit. Or knowing how difficult it would be to climb a ladder picking cherries. Hope you don't fall off the ladder.
Wow. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Catherine, how did you get into winemaking?
100% by accident. I applied to the Wineland Research Station and they gave my name to Show the Charms. And that's how Paul got my name. And as I said, I got interviewed. I got my diploma on the Saturday, started working on the Monday. I never applied to Show the Charms. I didn't even know where it was. So I'll say it must have been destiny. But it says I did learn a lot. It says I was able to use my statistical knowledge, which I really enjoy working with stats. I mean, I'm that kind of a person. I mean, back in high school days, I mean, I could go do almost every detail about any of the Buffalo Sabres, their name, number, heights, how many points, what they were good at, what they weren't good at. Top 40 music, I used to write down the Billboard top 40 all the time. That was how my mind worked. Needs to say that wasn't the way most typical females, like even in high school, I did take the advanced courses. So it'd be in a class of 26 when there'd be maybe 4 or 5 females and all the rest would be males. So you kind of just learn to be a little bit more accepting. But the guys I went to high school with were pretty good that way. There weren't many that really picked on us. That became a little bit more uncomfortable in university. Oddly enough. And again, to make a small batch of wine versus a big batch of wine, the tests are still the same. Just that when you're making this batch of wine out of 3 baskets of grapes, that's when you kind of had to crush them with your feet because you couldn't use any equipment. So you really did that. How much are you going to crush them? It's been a very learning experience. But it says I do have aspects of making different types of wine, not just white wine or red wine, where I've got specialty wine, the ice wine, the fruit wine. So when I do give my stories, they can be more entertaining for people to listen.
You never stomped grapes like Lucy did on the Lucy show.
Well, not quite, but in those little boxes we did, it was kind of similar. But you wouldn't want to do those with bare feet because those stems hurt.
Can we organize a wine tour in the summer of 2023 before Catherine gets really busy for BPW?
I will. I'll say we'll see what happens. This is right now. The smaller wineries are still bouncing back from COVID, so they're not giving as many tours. They're doing the tastings, but right now word out on the in the industries, there could be about 40% that are about ready to go under, because it's just been so tough. And bouncing back, this is like and sometimes all the levels of government were not all on the same page and didn't sort of comprehend how businesses work. Like they would tell you on a Friday afternoon, oh, can't do any inside tasting, so all your tastings have to be done outdoors. So everything you've had set up for going for Saturday morning, your bus tour at 9 o'clock, you have to then put one place outside and do that same bus tour. You can't tell the bus tour to wait, because it's already out. I don't know where I went.
You're still with us.
Okay, good. It says, I do have a rescue cat. I've had her now for 5 years. She is very, very shy, but she loves Zoom meetings for some reason. And although I've never been able to pick her up without being scratched, that happened once. I've still got the scars. I finally found a way I can actually pet her. And I finally found a treat after 5 years that she actually will like. But if there's a Zoom tour, she'll actually come and taunt me. So I thought she was actually going to jump on the laptop, so I kind of ducked.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have to. Yes, Nancy. You're muted, Nancy.
Okay, I learned something interesting the other day. I often wondered about this little divot at the bottom of the wine bottle. And I thought, gee, maybe
Yes.
it's to fool people thinking they've got more wine in their bottle than they do. But I found out it really has a very practical reason to have that divot in the bottom. Can you explain that for us, please?
Yes, it's usually done on your better varieties of wine where you're going to age the wine for a while. The coloring matter in wine, particularly red wine, is not always stable. So you will have some little particles that will precipitate out, and they will basically go to the bottom. So then as you're pouring that wine, they will be more likely to stay at the bottom of the wine. You just have to be pouring the bottle very slowly. The white wines will do that too, but sometimes it'll be more of a brownish, whereas some red wines will be more of a dark color. But the wine color is not always very stable, especially after a few years. Remind you that you say to drink wine between 3 to 5 years, but some of us do want to see how the wine will age even longer than that. So we do have sometimes wines that are a little bit over their peak. That is usually what that is for. And the punt does help. You can use your thumb to help stabilize the bottle. Champagne bottles are sometimes like that as well. Does that answer your question, Nancy?
Yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Oh, there's a few more questions.
Doesn't look like it. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Catherine. You are really an inspiration. You've been doing this for a while, and there are more women in the industry, which is great. But you sound like you're one of our pioneers in Canada. So it's really, thank you so much for leading the way for us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Norma put the link to Joseph's Estate Wines in the chat
Cool.
there for everybody. Yeah. So we will, at some point, whenever we can, we will try to get a wine tour down in the Niagara region, and
Perfect.
maybe, Nancy's will go stay at her place. So All right, so at this point, we'll get greetings from BPW Canada and International from our BPW Canada past president, Karen Gujarat.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Greetings from BPW Canada and President Angie. She's had a calendar full of things the last few weeks, so I'm sure she would have liked to have been here, but just too many commitments at this time of year, that's for sure. So BPW, well, the board is taking a little bit of a rest for the next couple of weeks, but come January, we'll be back full throttle. We still have the Ideas Project that's going on, and they're taking a little bit of a break, but all of the information is on our website. And if if it's of interest to you to join, then please reach out to Sheila or Doris. They would be happy to send you links to those meetings that happen regularly. We have pretty exciting times coming, because we'll be attending the North America. There's 10 of us from BPW Canada and some spouses that will be attending the North America and Caribbean Regional Conference in St. Kitts on the 7th or 8th of January for a week. So that's pretty exciting. There's over 100 people coming, and they'll be there from around the world. I know President Catherine's coming, and a number of the international board. So we'll hear from them, and certainly be sharing when we come back what's happening there. There was an invitation going out. I think the date is passed now for members to apply to be delegates for CSW. The Commission on the Status of Women 67 is a hybrid event this year. So there'll be some in person and a lot virtual. The parallel events will be probably about 80% will be virtual, 20% in person. But BPW Canada has applied jointly with the Coalition for Gender Equality in London and BPW London. We've put in an application for an in-person event, so we're hopeful we'll know the first week of January if we're approved or not. The challenge, I think, with CSW is that because there hasn't been an in-person event for the last 3 years, some of the places that might have been used for events in the past maybe aren't available now. So it's a big job for them to find the locations and kind of firm them up again. So more information to come, but I hope that even if if you're didn't apply to be a delegate, that you will participate in. There's no cost to attend virtually. And there's so many events that with amazing speakers. So there's a great learning opportunity. And the good thing is, if you're working 9 to 5, basically they run 24/7 because it's around the world. So, but many of us are looking to attend to go to New York. So that'll be exciting with BPW Canada having consultative status to be able to attend as a delegate on behalf of BPW Canada. So that will be a real plus for sure. And I guess that's it, because I can't think of anything else at this point, but I know that all the committees, whether it's membership resolutions, the deadline is March the 1st for resolutions. So they're all working on stuff, just taking a well-earned break over the holidays. So all the best to all of you for a wonderful Christmas and season, and all much health and happiness for 2023.
Thank you, Karen. Heather Ellis, past president of BPW Ontario, is going to bring greetings from Ontario.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. And thank you, everyone, on behalf of Marlene McKinnon, who is our current BPW Ontario president. I'd like to send you greetings and her wish that everyone have a great holiday. I'm excited because I get to go to St. Kitts, so I finally made it. I get to go and do some of this international stuff. So that's really exciting. BPW Canada is busy. We are working on our mentoring program and looking at doing an inclusion and diversity mini series, I'd call it, possibly starting the end of January, it looks like. Deadline for resolutions is January 30th. And Anne is our resolution chair, as being our first vice president, no pressure. Anyhow, so that's exciting. And Anne's also our membership chair, and we're looking forward. There's another session in Kingston, I think January 10th or 11th, Anne. Do you remember?
I'm just looking, I think it's the
Yeah, so
10th.
this is
but
really exciting. It looks like we've got momentum to get a club back in Kingston and area, so that's really exciting news. And the marketing committee is working on getting things organized regarding the website redo and that sort of stuff. So that's actually a big project. I didn't realize how big it was going to be. Other than that, we're trying to keep out of trouble and just keep working for women, and that sort of stuff. So everyone, please have a great and safe holiday, and all the best in the new year.
Thank you, Heather. Does anyone have any announcements or anything they want to share with us? Norma?
I will just share that you haven't seen it yet. When the BPW Canada newsletter comes out, there's an article about a priority issue committee, and I'm sharing that. It's called Reproductive Rights and Justice. So you can read all about it when the newsletter comes out, because I have an article in it, but save the third Wednesday in each month from January, February, March, and April, because we're going to have some presentations about the issue and education, because you think you know all about it, we know nothing.
All right, we'll get that put into the BPW Ontario calendar as well when I get the dates. So the next BPW Ontario speaker series is January 17th. Our guest speaker is the first female fire chief of the Belleville Fire Department, and she is the originator of Camp Molly, which is a group that has girls from 15 to 18. They get to be a firefighter for 3 days in the summer. It's quite exciting. Heather and I got to attend the first day of Camp Molly Quinte this year to present a check from our club. And the hangar was full of young girls putting on their bunker gear and volunteer people from all over Ontario, female and male firefighters there to help for the 3 days. And it was amazing. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from Monique about what happened and where we're going from there. It's a very exciting thing that really ties right in with BPW Ontario, BPW. So I'm excited. Does anyone else have anything? Oh, Christine says, however you celebrate the holidays, wishing peace and joy to all. Oh, Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody again that BPW Niagara Falls has put out a cookbook with appetizers, beverages, and sweets for the season for holiday entertaining. And it's a bit of a little fundraiser for us. And they're available anytime. It's only $10 and you get 120 pages of recipes. I worked hard on that. So I'm urging you to please consider it as a gift for somebody that you don't know what to give them. You know, this is last minute. There's always somebody on your list that you can't figure out what to give them, or a gift for yourself. Stick it in your own stocking. It's a very comprehensive and easy to follow. I made sure that the recipes are easy to follow and has ingredients that you have in your house, most of them that you have in your house. So please consider supporting our BPW Niagara Falls project and purchasing a cookbook as a gift to you or to anybody else. Thank you very much.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to share? Okay, seeing there's nothing from the floor. I will adjourn the meeting, and I thank all of you for joining us and wish you happy holidays and happy new year. And when we get together back again in January, we'll hit the ground running again.
Okay.
Well,
Merry
Thank you,
Christmas,
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for
Thank
another
you.
great
Bye.
session.
Thank
Happy
you again,
holidays.
Cass.
Thank you,
Merry
Catherine.
Christmas, everyone.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.